My very bad videos from the other day. This is Battleship Part 2. I cleaned off my screen, maybe to make it a little bit easier to see. So we did the board, the constructor, the two-string method. We did the add a ship. I did it with you for horizontal. Now, what I did do though is I pulled this little if statement out because it doesn't matter if it's horizontal or vertical, we do need to check the row and the column, so I really didn't need to do that inside. So I made a little change. So if horizontal, this method returns a Boolean, so that would be good. If that is true, okay, then we're going to go through here, and we went through, if it's horizontal, we looked at the column plus the length. If it's greater than the length of our array, we returned false, and we looked at each column. And if it was not equal to a dash, we returned false because there wasn't a place that we could add a ship. Otherwise, we added a B. Okay, so as long as this if statement is very important to make sure that we started at whatever column they wanted. It's actually a row, but we're looking at the individual columns of that row. And if it's less than the columns plus the length. So if they take column 3 and they want a ship that's 4, they're going to start at 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be our indexes. And if it's not a dash, we return false because it's already been used. Otherwise, we can add a B. We did the same thing. The else is for if it's vertical, copy and paste the whole thing. All you're doing here is changing it from rows down here. So if row is greater than length and I equals row is less than row plus length. And this time, instead of putting row I, we put I col. Notice the difference from up here. So we are doing this based on columns, not based on rows. All right. So you can stop the video if you want to make sure, but I would try to do this on your own and then compare it to mine. Okay. So otherwise, return true. All right, the only place we're returning false is if there is a dash in any of those, or if there's not a dash in one of those rows or columns, because then we cannot add a B to it. Found a ship. All right, it tells you in the instructions on these milestones. All right, found ship. You'll need to think about horizontal and vertical cases separately. Check for both types of ship. When iterating through, you will need a variable to keep track of the length of the continuous row of squares containing B's. Okay, so this is my variable that's going to keep track of the number of B's in a row. And the first time through, I'm looking at for each row. Basically, I'm looking at rows and the column in each row. And this is what I did my nested or, my matrix for loop, okay, rows and columns. If it is equal to a B, which we want, wherever I'm finding a ship, I'm going to put in the length of a ship. It's going to go through every square. As soon as it finds a B, it's going to add that. All right. Let's see. Okay, this line should not be here. I thought I took it out. Yes, this has to come out because this can only be done at the end when I determined I've gone through the entire array. So that was the thing I had to fix. So as I'm going through each row, if it's a B, I'm going to increase my ship length. Else, I'm going to go right back to 0 again before I go to the next position. After I've gone through all of the rows, okay, I'm going to say if the ship length is equal to the length that the person put in, return true. Okay, so I found a ship of that length. Then I'm going to do the whole thing going vertically. Look, I'm starting with C. This is going to be column predominant, column dominant. I don't know what they call it. All right, I'm starting with C. Now I'm going to look at all the rows. If the squares, it's RC again. If it's equal to a B, ship length plus plus. Otherwise, I set my ship length back to 0. When I've gone through all of it, looking at each column and going down, if I find that the ship length is equal to the length, true, I found a ship of that length. Otherwise, if there's no ship that length, I return false. All right. What else did I want to check here? Okay, yeah, and anytime I hit a B, if it's a B, I equal it, and I'm going to keep going. If I don't get a B, I go back starting to 0. So if I went through, 2, 3, 4, and I had B's, but then and it's a length of 4, and I've gone through 3 elements, and then the last one is not a B, I'm going to start back at 0 again because I didn't find one of that length. All right, so those would be the squares for that. You probably will need to be really stopping and think about this as you are putting it in. Okay, they did this with a while loop, but I think since we've been doing, matrices like this, I was going to stick with the same kind of coding for rows and columns. All right, for two-dimensional arrays. Okay, last one, shoot. All right, last thing, and this is information they gave us. If the shot is out of bounds, they want us to return an integer. So we're returning -1. And so what we do is we do the check for the row is less than 0, the column less than 0, the row is greater than the length, or the col is greater than the column length. All right, that would be our return -1. If you hit a ship, this one should have been able to do on your own. If squares, row and column is equal to a B, okay, if it's equal to a B, I'm going to make it an X when I shoot. If they give me a row and a column, I'm just checking that position. I'm going to mark it as an X, and I'll return 1. All right, if a ship was hit, it can be hit anywhere within the length of that ship. Hate this game. All right. Now, if it already has an X or an M, then we are going to return 2. So if squares, row, column, the one that they give us, is equal to an X, or it has an M in it, means that you missed. You already shot there, but there was nothing there, or I shot there and I got an X, I'm going to return a true. Okay, let's see. Squares, row, column equals a miss. If there's, if I'm not getting anything, if it's not one I already had and it's not a B, let's make it a miss and then return 0. So that was the instructions from that. So int, if it's out of bounds, -1. If you get a hit, all right, replace it with an X. If it's squares already shot, let's make it if square already shot. If it's an X or an M, you've already shot at it, return true, otherwise it's a miss. Okay, and finally the game over. Finally use the for in loop or whatever they called it for each string R in the array. Okay, I'm going through each string, which is each position. If that string dot equals B, return false. Otherwise return true. If there's no B's, you haven't had any, there's no B's left, okay, that's basically what you're saying. It's either you won or you lost. All right, so if S dot equals B, so that means that you didn't get all of the ships. If there are no B's left, then you return true. Interesting. My question here is, am I getting all of them though? Like, am I getting them consecutively here? Oh, okay. If a ship is hit, like what about the squares and the columns next to it? I get that one, but what about the one right after it? If I shoot here at this row and column, I guess it knows the ship, each ship has a length, so it immediately takes care of all of them. That has to be in the other class. All right, that is Battleship. I think this was really tough. I was very surprised and happy that I got 100%. The only thing I had to change was I had to move this outside of the nested for loop there, okay? Because I didn't want to do it after I've checked everything, going all of the rows, and then here after, or this one after all the rows, and this one after all of the columns. So that was the only change I had to make to get 100%. So I hope this helps you. Probably went a little fast, but it's all there if you need to stop it. I would encourage you before doing the shoot. It's just, a bunch of if-else statements, and I think that, or if statements, so maybe you could really try to work on that one on your own. Okay? All right. End of story, I hope.